If you ask any artist in existence, they have their favorite and least favorite albums that they've ever put out. And sometimes, if they really, really, really hate that album for different reasons altogether, then they may not ever go back to that album again in a live setting, or just will completely act like it never happened in the first place. And you can commend some bands for having bad albums that still go back and play those songs and talk about it, like Metallica with Saint Anger. You'd figure that they wouldn't even want anything to do with it either, but they've gone and they re-recorded one of their songs, All Within My Hands, for the S&M 2, made it sound a lot better, and when they play the song live, or the songs, I should say, from that album live, they make them sound a lot better, mainly because there's no pounding snare drum just, molesting your mind. It's just, nice sounding this time. But these are 7 artists that just have a reason why they don't go back to an album, or albums in this case for some of them, in their discography. So these are in no particular order, so let's just get the obvious one out of the way. Poppy with Bubble Bath EP and her debut album, which came out in 2016-2017 respectively. It's not that she won't acknowledge these anymore. She'll acknowledge Poppy.Computer more than Bubble Bath, but it seems like she's sort of shying away from those from that era. It just doesn't seem like she wants it to be much a part of her anymore, as we all know who she made that album with. Granted, she's made all of her albums with Titanic Sinclair, but she was able to branch off and start doing what she really wanted to do around late 2018 into 2019-ish. And I don't know, there's still songs from Poppy.Computer I know she sings. Like, I still see her play My Style and whatnot, My Microphone, but that's really all about it, all I really see anymore. And with Bubble Bath, I mean, you'd have to go back to like maybe 2018 to even see a song from that EP be played live. And she's also just said before that she just despises that EP, doesn't really like it that much. And like I said, there's all different reasons, and even in an interview beforehand though, she did say that it's not that she regrets those projects, it's just that she's grown so much over the years that sometimes when we mature and do other things, we may find out that, that wasn't as good as I thought when it first released, and I guess that's where her mind is at this point with those 2 records. Kiss. We got about 15 years of content here for Kiss that they don't really go back to a whole lot. Heck, I can even go back to 1980 as well, to 81 and 82 when they had Unmasked, Music from the Elder, and Creatures of the Night come out. But they still sing songs from those albums, except for maybe Music of the Elder, so I guess we'll throw that one in here too. But I'm specifically looking at the Unmasked years, the years where they decided to take the makeup off and do their thing. Still as Kiss, just like I said, minus the gimmick. And they did it from 1983 to technically 1997. I know in 1996 they had the reunion with Peter, Criss, and Ace Frehley, put the makeup back on. But they had an album come out in 1997 that they didn't promote because of the reunion tour going on, that being Carnival of Souls. And they still sing songs from some of those albums. Like, I've heard them still sing Heaven's on Fire, Lick It Up, Unholy from those records from those times, but for the most part they stay away from it, because a lot of people like to call that the Ace Frehley solo project years, because if you look up until 1992's Revenge, Gene Simmons kind of took a back seat with vocals a lot, I guess mainly because from what Paul Stanley says, Gene didn't really like the direction and the fact that they had to take the makeup off because it felt like it messed with Gene's demon persona. So you had a lot of hits in that era that featured Ace Frehley singing, and some of them good, but once you get to about 85, 87-ish is when it really became hit or miss for Kiss, and you can see why they don't go back to those songs a lot. They want to sing the older classics that everybody wants to hear, not some deep cut off of an album that didn't really do anything for anybody, it's just like that kind of thing. So it's not that I don't think Kiss despise that era, it's just they are more known for their live shows and singing their hits, and if that's what they gotta do, then that's what they gotta do. Next we have Panic at the Disco, another band that doesn't necessarily go back to their first 2 records. Now, a favor you can't sweat out is probably just because at this point, Brendan Urie's Tired of Singing I Write Sins Not Tragedies. That's probably the only song from that album he still plays live to this day, unless he does some sort of a Fever You Can't Sweat Out melody where he sings a bunch of those songs from those albums all at once. And the second album, Pretty Odd, he still sings Night in the Afternoon from that record, but for the most part he says the reason that we, other than the era that this record came from, the reason that after the Pretty Odd era ended, we didn't sing those songs live a lot was, well, one, because, some band members left and it was just like, oh, well, that sucks. But he said those songs from Pretty Odd just didn't feel like they were very good for a live setting at this case. It was more of a mellower, different sounding album. For the most part, I don't think Brendan Urie hates Panic's first two records. I just think the debut record had that one hit song on it that he's just grown to dislike over the years because he has to play it every single show. And with Pretty Odd, I can agree with him that there's probably not much of a live setting to these songs except for maybe a couple, but you still gotta show some love to that record. Come on, it's their best one. Next we have Bring Me the Horizon, and I chose to just throw the whole metalcore era from 2006 to 10 in there, well, deathcore for the first record and then metalcore for the next two. And the only reason I'm not counting Sempiternal, because if you see their live shows now or watch them live, they go back to Sempiternal, That's the Spirit, Ammo, and will probably be singing all the songs off of their new record come next year when they start going back into doing live shows again. They already have some scheduled shows for next year outside of the US, so you'll be hearing a lot of the songs from the Survival Horror EP next year as well. And I know, before you freak out, Bring Me the Horizon still do some of these songs. It's just kind of like what Brendan Urie does with the Panic's first record. They do more of a melody of the first three records, and heck, I think maybe the only thing they might sing off of There Is a Hell Anymore is that one song. It's escaping my mind for some reason. I don't know why, but they still do Suicide Season and Count Your Blessings stuff, just in the more melody form, where they'll play like a minute of each song, cram them all together, just to make the fans happy. Like, you still want to hear it? Fine, here you go. But even Ollie Sykes has said, we've grown out of that. We don't want to write the heaviest songs that we used to. Even on Post-Human Survival Horror EP, when people call it heavy, I think they're over-exaggerating a bit. There are heavy moments on the record, but for the most part, it's just kind of like what they are now with the sound that they've come to create, which is just a mixture of a bunch of different things. They've come appealing to everybody, whereas back then, it was more about we're these teenage kids trying to write the heaviest song we can, and they just got tired of it. And who knows if they'll ever fully go back to singing these songs live separately for a live occasion. This one's kind of obvious, but Asking Alexandria don't go back to the black at all. That wasn't an AC/DC reference, it wasn't supposed to be, just bear with me here. The reason they don't go back to this record is simple. Danny Worsnop was not on this record. Danny Worsnop is back in the band. Therefore, why the hell would Danny Worsnop sing on the only record that he was not on for this band? It just doesn't make sense for you to go, hey, these songs you didn't write that are mostly about you? Yeah, can you sing those for us? He's not going to do it. It seemed like he didn't really like Dennis Stoff in the first place, the singer for this record at this point in time. But, when you have a record as bland and mediocre as The Black was, and, a different lead singer who later comes back after squashing everything, and these songs were made about, like, oh, we just need to move on from him. No one really gives a shit anymore. We're done with him. It's just like, why? Why would you force him to sing those songs? It would just seem a little disrespectful when you finally buried the hatchet and he came back a year later and you formed this new sound, which is mixed to some people, but I think the self-titled is still their best record to date. It's correct. I'm not wrong in this situation. And I feel like Danny Worsnop has become more of a singer than we could have ever expected. But yeah, you just don't ask him to play songs from this record because it's just disrespectful. The Strokes. Is this it? I saw an article the other day about Julian Casablancas, the lead singer of this band, talking about not singing Last Night live anymore, mainly because he just, again, like Brendan Urie with I Write Sins Not Tragedies, you just get tired of it. You know, this was off of their debut record, and the fact that it became a hit so fast, I think, caught the band off guard, and it got to a point where, like, why do we have to play this live every show? It's just so, like, there are probably better songs out there from our other records that we could be playing in place of this. And, you know, they're not the only band that have taken one of their hit songs off Radiohead with Creep for all those years. Paramore's doing it with Misery Business now. It's just, once you get tired of the song or just can't relate to the song anymore, it's like, why do you want to keep playing it? I mean, some bands still do it for the fans' sake, but to keep their sanity and to keep their interest in live shows, they've just decided to remove it completely. A controversial thing, but I think Last Night is the reason that the Strokes don't go back to their debut album often in a live setting, because of that one song that appeared on it that helped them get big. And last but not least, speaking of Paramore, I can assure you this is a true fact, because about, 2 years ago already, yeah, July of 2018, when I saw them in Maryland at the Merriweather Post Pavilion, they were pretty much, you know, they did something from every album except for their debut record, All We Know Is Falling. They did the hits from Riot, like Misery Business, before they decided to retire that. That's What You Get and Crush, Crush, Crush were also a part of that. They played Ain't It Fun and Still Into You from the self-titled. They played like 8 or 9 of the songs from After Laughter, because it's the album they were touring for. And they sang songs like Ignorance, Playing God, Misguided Ghost, and The Only Exception from Brand New Eyes. But yet, they didn't sing anything from All We Know Is Falling, which if there was anything I thought they would sing, it would either be Pressure or Emergency, but even they didn't do that. And it led me to realize, they don't go back to this album, if at all, do they? I mean, it was just apparent. I thought, you know, they don't have that many albums out yet. I mean, what, they're going to be on number 6 whenever they decide to release that next, so it's kind of like, you know, you could still probably get something from every album in a live setting, but that just wasn't the case. And I guess it was more because, you know, Hayley Williams was younger at this point in time. I think she was under 18 when this record came out. And when you look at, you know, her lyrics as a kid to her lyrics growing up, they've definitely gotten better over the years and less, I guess, like, oh, I'm a little emo, whiny kid. Not to say that I'm not into that music, I am, but for the most part it's like, you know, I understand why they don't go back to this record, and I understand why they also axed Misery Business from a live setting too, because it's not their best single. People argue with me all the time on this, but Misery Business is far from their best single to ever be put out. Just because it was the one that made them big doesn't mean it is their best song. But yeah, in the end, All We Know Is Falling, apparently not a part of Paramore's future at all. So yeah, that does it for 7 bands and artists that have that one album or multiple albums that they just don't go back to for reasons. You guys can tell me in the comments below, what are some other records by some popular artists that they just don't go back to, whether it's just because they hate it now or they look back at it and go, you know, it's good, but I felt like we've done a lot better, or maybe it's just got one of those hit songs on it that made them big, and they're just like, nope, fuck it, we're not doing this anymore. I can't keep playing this song live over and over and over again when I feel like the stuff we've done past that is a lot better. It's just interesting to see when artists hate their own work, because you're like, well, you did write it, you created it, so obviously you would like everything you do right, but even that's not the case, and we see it all the time. So yeah, stay safe out there, and until then guys, I will catch you all in the next one.